Hello and welcome to Jurassic Reviews. Today we'll be taking a look at another X Plus Godzilla figure, this time from the Gigantic series. The Gigantic series consists of the largest figures X Plus produces, hence the name. It's one of my favorite lines, and I've been trying to collect them all. I have a version of every release except for the 54-inch Shin Godzilla. Unless they do a re-release of the Shin, I don't think I'll have a chance of getting that one anytime soon. Today's figure, which just arrived today for me, is the X Plus Gigantic Series Godzilla 1989 from the film Godzilla vs. Biollante. This is the first original release Gigantic Godzilla I've gotten, and it doesn't disappoint. Before we go into the details of this figure, here's the box it came in. This is the main one. It was actually packaged in 3 different boxes. Like most X Plus figures, the tail comes separate from the main body. I usually don't have too much of a problem putting the tails on these things, but for whatever reason I struggled with this one. It was tough. I've seen a few people online saying they had no problem with theirs, and I really wish that would have been the case for me. And yeah, I heated up the part where the tail goes in and got it squishy and soft. It was still a nightmare. But thankfully that is over with now. Let's move on to the figure itself. This is the tallest X Plus Godzilla figure yet, standing an inch or two taller than both the gigantic Burning Godzilla and the Shin Godzilla. It stands about 20.5 inches tall and is a little over 20 inches long. The shorter length is only due to the tail being curved to the side. If it weren't for the curve, this thing would probably be close to 40 inches in length. The tail is huge on this one. First, let's go over the details and paint applications on various parts of the figure. Starting with the head, the first thing that sticks out to me is the eyes. They are both large and awesome looking. I think I remember seeing early prototype pictures of this figure and the eyes on them looked a little bit off, but that's not the case with the release version. They nailed it. The pupils are painted black and the rest is yellow and orange. The mouth sports a double row of teeth, both top and bottom. Each are individually sculpted and painted. They are painted a sort of beige color. The gums and tongue are painted pink, with the tongue having this crazy texture across it. It looks really cool. Also on the top of the head you can see a mixture of different textures. You have the tree bark looking skin around the mouth and the beginnings of the dorsal plates on the top of its head. Speaking of that tree bark texture, it covers the vast majority of this figure, from the neck all the way down to the legs and tail. The majority of this figure is painted a dark charcoal gray. The chest and neck are the only spots that have a different texture, with the chest being more scaly. The fingers and toenails are painted with a black, brown, and gray gradient, though the fingers are a bit lighter in tone than the toenails. I'd also like to point out that the feet on this guy don't really stand flat on the ground. The toenails are lifted up a bit. I've seen some people online using tail stands on this one, but I think I'm just going to leave it how it is. It doesn't really bother me. Moving on to the dorsal plates, they are also fantastic. The edges on them are painted mostly bone white, though there is a bit of light brown on some of the larger spines. The bone white disappears a little bit going down the tail, with the smaller spines being more dark gray. The textures on the inside of the plates are also really well done. So yeah, overall this figure is incredibly detailed, and I think the likeness to its movie counterpart is pretty close. I honestly wasn't really sure what to expect from this figure, and I have to admit I'm blown away. There are some things I could nitpick about, like some of the seams. The one around the neck in particular seems to get a lot of attention online, but really now that I have it in person it doesn't look that bad at all. I do want to mention this is the standard version, which is probably obvious to those who are familiar with X Plus figures. The Rick version included an extra lower jaw, one that made it look closed. It also came with glow-in-the-dark dorsal plates. The jaw option would have been nice, but it is something I can live without. And personally, I'm not a fan of glow-in-the-dark features. I prefer getting more detail over having that. I'm totally happy with the standard. Before I give my rating on this guy, let's do some quick comparisons with other X Plus figures, mostly Gigantics. Here it is next to the X Plus Gigantic Burning Godzilla, my previous tallest X Plus figure. I actually can't decide which one I like more, which is surprising because I wasn't really feeling this figure after the initial prototype images, but luckily it turned out great. And here it is with the first ever X Plus Gigantic series figure, the Gigantic GMK Godzilla, which is actually my favorite X Plus figure. Here it is next to a 30cm scale figure. though admittedly one of the larger ones, the roaring Godzilla 2014. And here it is with one more 30cm scale figure, the Baragon 1968. And just for fun, here it is with my only other 1989 Godzilla, the SH Monster Arts version. For a rating out of 10, I give this one a 9. This is an early candidate for Figure of the Year for me. I am so happy I picked this one up. It has some strong competition ahead, by the looks of it, but I really think by the end of the year this might be my favorite. It just has an amazing sculpt and pose, and its massive size really makes it stick out on the shelf. This one actually has to be on the top shelf, where he'll soon be joined by the gigantic 64, and eventually Prime 1's Gamera 99, which is actually the figure I really want to compare this one with. I'll be sure to do that if that thing ever decides to arrive. Kind of goes without saying at this point, but I highly recommend picking this one up. I know its availability is already getting difficult, but seriously, hunt it down before the prices get even higher. You won't regret it. And that's it for the X Plus Gigantic Series Godzilla 1989. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you next time.